an otherwise legitimate expression of the fundamental rights and freedoms of assembly was infiltrated and hijacked by a group of organized criminals.
Kenya government, led by His Excellency William Ruto, at a loggerhead with BBC Africa after BBC exposing what happened in June 24, 2024, when the chaos erupted after the controversial bill that intended to hike taxes in Kenya.
I run a government, but I also lead people, and the people have spoken. I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 finance bill.
Nkwaniza nnyo ku Essential Media Uganda, amanya enze Mr. Essential Akatela enze yamata agatafa. Kindly subscribe, like and share. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss any amazing content that we upload on a daily basis. So now, recently BBC Africa yavuddeyo nefulumya documentary elaga ebyo ebyaliwo mu June omwaka ogwedde gwa 2024. Yavuddeyo ne exposing authorities abandamininga era abakuba abantu. KDF, that is Kenya Defence Force, yavaayo neyingira mu beekalakasi ng'egamba bano baali beekalakasa olwa bill eyali eyisiddwa mu parliament ng'enegendereddwamu okulaba ng'eyongeza emiwendo oba ng'eyongeza ebisale ku miwendo gy'ebintu, era bannakenya nga bagamba kino kyali tekyetaagisa. Gavumenti ya Kenya ekulirwa William Ruto yavaayo neetegeeza negamba nti nno kino yakikola so that okulaba nga reducinga external dependency, era yagenderwamu okulaba nti nesasula ku misolo naddala n'amabanja agabanjibwa eggwanga erya Kenya. Abantu abasoba mu 10,000 bavaayo ne bagenda ku streets eza Kenya nga bagamba nedda kino tekisoboka, olwedde ebintu bya bbeeyi ate toyinza kutwongeza bisale oba toyinza kutwongeza bintu ng'olwedde ebintu bya bbeeyi nnyo tetukyasobola nabigula naddaffe abantu abewansi. Kati nno awakajegalo wekaali era twalabako mu biseera ebyo mwaka ogwedde nga abeekalakasi bayingira parliament. Muno nno mwafiramu abantu abawera 64 era nga abangi abasoba mu 200 bavaayo n'ebisago saako n'abali mu 8 abatamanyiddwa mayitire ne ku ssaawa eno. BBC Focus on Africa yafulumiza documentary eno ng'eraga ebyo ebyaliwo. Authorities in Kenya bavuddeyo ne bagamba this is a one-sided investigation era tebagikkiriza. BBC yabadde eteeseteese okulaba ng'escreeninga era ng'ebeera ne discussion okulaba nti nno abantu bakubaganya empawa ku bintu ebyaliwo mu 2024 akavuvuŋŋana ako akaliwo. Ab'ebyokwerinda saako n'ab'obuyinza mu ggwanga erya Kenya bagambye this is not necessary.
Today, an otherwise legitimate expression of the fundamental rights and freedoms of assembly was infiltrated and hijacked by a group of organized criminals.
More than 100,000 people took to the streets of the capital, Nairobi, on 25th June 2024, calling on MPs not to pass the controversial finance bill. Leading human rights organization also renewed calls for investigations into the killing of protesters by Kenya's security forces during demonstrations against a rise in taxes last June. This follows BBC Africa Focus on Africa investigation exposing member of security forces who shot dead 3 protesters at Kenya's parliament during the public outrage and demand for justice. The Amnesty International and the Kenya Human Rights Commission said the officers identified in the documentaries should face the law.
When I came into office, I told everybody, tighten up your belts. I am not going to preside over a bankrupt country. I am not going to preside over a country that is in debt distress.
Kenya's government spokesman responded by saying every life is important. The police watchdog is conducting an investigation and criticized the BBC documentary for being one-sided. Those who did the documentary should have sought government opinion so that they can be fair and balanced. That is Isaac Maula, the Kenyan government spokesman, said. He said, for example, they show the parliament being burnt, but they don't show who is doing it. They seem to minimize the vandalization that happened in the parliament. He also admitted the protesters had legitimate concerns about the finance bill, but said, we cannot have a country that also is led through anarchy and mayhem. The BBC documentary has created more anger among young people. You can't stop the media. There are some reactions concerning this BBC documentaries that I want you to look into. Of course, some welcomed this documentary, saying it exposes the impunity, the dictatorship of the government of Mr. William Ruto. After this documentary was released on BBC official YouTube page, they intended to also screen it to the people of Kenya. But of course, the Kenyan authorities stopped them. And this was a disappointment to the BBC. So they wrote saying it was in our disappointment that the Kenyan government or Kenyan authority stopped us from screening, and what you can do is to watch the entire documentary on BBC Focus on Africa official YouTube page. So these are the reactions of the people of Kenya regarding this documentary. I'll start with Joshua Kimani. He said, being a Kenyan, watching this is so heartbreaking. The fallen heroes deserved this kind of documentary to keep their legacy alive. My prayers goes to their families. Thank you, BBC, for this. Kenyans of goodwill will never forget. That is Joshua Kimani, posted on YouTube page. Then David said, yes, we are capable of paying for this video to air on a national TV as a commercial during the first week of August 2027. Hit like if you agree. Cheg Keranja said, remember, I lost my leg during the protest. The government did not check upon me as I was fighting for my rights. Eclipse Ejoli also said, from Singapore, Eski, we stand with Kenyans. So these are some of the reactions, positive reactions, and of course some of them are negative, but many of them are positive according to this documentary, since it was released, I think, like 3 to 4 days back. When you go to their YouTube page, you will find that it is almost 3.5 million views. So that means people of Kenya have watched, and across the world, people across the world have watched this documentary concerning the chaos and the protests that was that was staged in June 2024 on the streets of the Republic of Kenya. So Evans Mongo said BBC have done justice to us Kenyans and they deserve more subscriptions from us as a thanksgiving. David said, this is a reason why we should make Ruto a one-term president. Quest JJ said, "From Nigeria, we stand with Kenya." Research paper said, "I was among the protesters on June 25th, 2024. What the BBC missed is that since there were no mats, that is public vehicles, that evening we trekked all the way from town to our various estates. However, the police followed us in the dark and killed upwards of 270 people along Thika superhighway. The bodies were collected and dumped in a quarry. I weep for this day. It could have been me, and there is nothing to smile about it." And of course, so many reactions regarding this documentary, but those are the few of the reactions that I've gathered to show it to you. But since then, the authority of Kenya say that this documentary is a one-sided investigation and should be treated with contempt it deserves. So in response to the documentary, before it was aired, the police service said the force could not investigate itself, adding that Kenya's Independent Policing Oversight Authority, that is IPOA, was responsible for investigating alleged misconduct. The Kenyan Defense Force, that is KDF, told the BBC the IPOA had not forwarded any request to look into any of its personnel involved in the operations at the parliament. They aimed to kill. That is, BBC identifies the security force who shot Kenya and tax protesters. BBC Africa Eyes Blood Parliament documentary revealed how security forces brutally responded to youthful protesters who breached Kenya's parliament on 2024 June 25th. The controversial financial bill that was aimed at raising about 2.7 billion, the government said it needed to cut its reliance on external borrowing, but had sparked widespread using open source data and user-generated content. The BBC analysis of more than 5,000 images identified uniformed security personnel, a policeman and a soldier, who opened fire, killing 3 unarmed protesters at Parliament. The wider clampdown by the security forces on a series of protests against the finance bill left at least 65 people dead, resulted in the forcible disappearance of about 89 others and arrest of thousands, according to the report from the Amnesty International. Though the report from the Amnesty International suggests 89 disappearances, but the Kenyan government put the death toll at 42. On Monday, BBC said it had cancelled the private screening of the documentary in Kenya capital Nairobi due to pressure from the authority. They said, "We are very disappointed not to have been able to share documentary and panel discussion as planned," a BBC spokesperson said. In the meantime, audience can watch the film on BBC Africa YouTube channel, the spokesman added. Amnesty International said the documentary corroborated the group's earlier report that unnecessary and excessive real force that was used against the protesters. It called on the police and the army to publicly state the actions being taken with regards to the finding of the BBC expose. The rights group urged Kenyans to sign a petition calling for a public inquiry into the killings during what were dubbed Occupy Parliament protests. The KHRC said the BBC documentary revealed how organized criminals in police and military uniforms were deployed to murder innocent. Mr. Mwaura said the documentary risked inciting Kenyans to violence, while one legislator called for the BBC to be banned in Kenya. Wow. George Peter Karuma said the 37-minute-long documentary risked destabilizing the country, but Senator Edwin Sifuna defended the documentary, saying there were no fabrication in it. We must encourage these stories to be told from all angles for the sake of the truth and justice. Those who are uncomfortable with this are wrestling with their own consciences, and we cannot help them with that, Sifuna posted on Twitter, that is X. So apparently that is the state of the BBC documentary that focused on the protests and demonstration that occurred on 25th June 2024, where almost 68 people were shot dead during the protest. These Gen Zs accused the government of hiking prices in the commodities and they could not afford. The government responded by saying this was intended to reduce the borrowing from the external sources. Gen Zs, those are the youth all over Kenya, said this was wrong and they had to protest for their rights. Ever since William Samoei Ruto came into power, a lot of demonstrations and chaos have been occurring in Kenya, and people are not resting. They say Ruto must go because he's a real dictator. What do you think about this documentary that was released by BBC Africa Eye? Drop your comment in the comment section. Don't forget to like, to subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any amazing content that we upload on a daily basis.
I run a government, but I also lead people, and the people have spoken. I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 finance bill. That becomes our collective position.